It says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Hey,
We're live. Seems to imply it. Okay.
right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly roundup. So today, something came up that has come up before, but slightly different angle this time. And it was about teachers running their own retreats. And within this kind of discussion, I would say teachers running their own teacher trainings would also be a thing. The general idea is the teachers that come and teach at your studio, they are benefiting from the marketing and the investment that you've done in your studio, sometimes for decades of time and lots of money building up that clientele. Teachers come in, they teach there, they become known to the clientele, become known to everyone, and after a few years decide to maybe run their own retreat or teacher training, something that's like potentially a big ticket item, can bring in a lot of revenue. And yeah, doing it kind of on the back of your marketing, which sometimes feels like, I'm not sure if this is quite right. So especially if you as a studio owner, if you are also running your own retreats and your own teacher trainings that you are trying to market to your clientele, and then suddenly there's these competing retreats and teacher trainings happening with teachers that your clients know and love because they met them at your studio. And these days, it's very easy for teachers to market that to your clientele, even without breaking any kind of rules or teacher agreements that they have signed. Very, very easy. Even if they do not ever mention that in class, just the fact that everyone is on social media these days makes it so easy, because a lot of people are going to be on social media and who are in class and attending classes, they will start to follow not just the studio, but that teacher's own teacher account. So very, very easy for them to get visibility for their own retreats. So what do you do? So yesterday I spoke to a studio owner who had this happen, and it was in fact a retreat that 2 or 3 people from the studio, employees and teachers, were involved in running. And she felt that this wasn't quite right because it's kind of competing with her own products. And she decided that she wanted to change up her teacher agreement. And what we kind of decided on, the suggestion here, was to have something that's 3 different levels of these like separate events. So at the basic level, and so this would all go into the teacher agreement. On the basic level, the studio would not market the retreat at all, or training, whichever. The teacher would completely just market it themselves, and they would, of course, abide by the regular agreement that they couldn't mention it in class or solicit to your clients, etc. And just by the fact that that teacher is teaching at the studio would still get the percentage. We landed on 7%. So 7% of the total ticket price. So anybody signing up for that teacher's retreat, just by the fact of them teaching at your studio, you'd get 7%. The second level was the teacher would take part of the studio's promotional package. So the studio would actively promote that teacher's retreat, and this was written down, like specified what exactly the studio would do. There'd be a number of emails, a number of social media posts, there'd be flyers around the studio, and the teacher would be completely free to talk about their retreat in their classes and around the studio, and the studio would help promote them. And in that case, the studio would get 20 or 25% of the total ticket price. I don't know if these percentages are going to quite land where they are, but it would be something around that. And then the third level would be that it's a collaborative retreat or training. So then the studio is also responsible for something, and then the percentages would be negotiated on a case-by-case basis. So to me, I think this sounded fair. Where it gets maybe tricky is to get teachers to sign this who are already teaching that. They might be reluctant. It's different if you do it from the beginning when somebody's brand new and starting to teach for you. But to go in and tell your current teachers that you now need to sign this updated agreement, this is what it's going to be going forward, could be a little harder. But I don't know, this studio owner, she's going to bravely go forth with this and do it.
Well, somebody always has to start the trend. I remember when I took a lot of heat back in the day. And for those of you in the Bikram world know that there was always this unwritten rule that if you went to Bikram yoga teacher training, you got to practice for free at any Bikram yoga studio wherever you went. And because that was partly because Bikram didn't pay his teachers at his headquarters in Los Angeles. So they got to teach, but then they got free yoga. So anyway, that aside, long story short, it just got to be way out of control. So I started charging teachers, that non-staff teachers, to teach. And you would have thought, that I had suggested, but within a year, almost every studio in the area was following suit. But so I took a lot of facts. So boldly go for it. Boldly go where no one has gone before. I think it is, to your point, Vicki, I think having that in a teacher agreement right from the get-go, so with new teachers coming on, it makes it a lot easier. I do agree that this is something, it's funny that I just had this conversation with a studio director, same thing earlier this week, exact same topic. What do you do? The one thing that I did note when we were talking is it might be a little hard to enforce. How do you enforce it? I guess it's like, particularly if the studio's not doing anything, right? It's just because you teach here, you're going to pay me whatever, let's say 7%. Is, how is that going to happen? I mean, just like the logistics of that, and that I could see that getting a little bit messy. But I do feel that, to your point that you made, is the studio director has invested time and energy building the studio, building the list and all that thing. I think that part of it could be, as you said, a collaborative thing, as a way, if you flip it over and look at it from the perspective as a studio director, look at it as this is a way to perhaps really foster loyalty with your teachers, and also giving them that avenue to earn more income. Because as we all know, Vicki's been there, I've been there, all of us have been there, it's tough to make a living as a yoga teacher. I mean, you can only teach so many classes in a week, and then you're tapped out, right? You're tapped out. It's not like there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much energy you can put towards teaching. So how can a yoga teacher make additional income? Well, one is to do workshops or retreats and workshops and things like that. So I think looking at it from a collaborative perspective and having it in the agreement is the way to go. And it'll be interesting to see how this goes with the studio director going to the teachers. Now, one thing that this other studio, my client that I was working with this week, was talking about is in terms of marketing, same thing, different levels of marketing and what the studio is going to get. They opted to go with just a flat fee, like a flat, not like a percentage, but just like $75 or $100, something like just a flat rate, regardless of what the retreat price was. And that could kind of, we haven't really landed on what exactly that's going to be, but but part of it too is how many classes a week they taught, for them to even market to their community, and having the teacher be able to put, was sort of two levels, same thing, Vicki. It's like no involvement marketing wise. You can leave your brochures, you can leave your cards, you can have a poster up, but you can't talk about it. You can just passively promote it. And then actively promoting it was you can announce it, blah, blah, blah. We'll send an email, things like that. Then there's the studio gets more of that. But what this studio director did was it capped it at, okay, you have to be, for us to even do this, you have to teach at least 6 or more classes a week. So it was like if you were only teaching a couple of classes a week. Now, this studio happens to have 2 locations and a ton of classes on their schedule. So they do have quite a few teachers that teach more than 6 classes a week. So if that's not you, then I just thought it was interesting that she settled on if you're only teaching a couple of classes a week. So this also could be viewed as a way to get teachers to want to teach for you more and become more loyal to you. So I think that's an interesting thing. And I think as we move forward, like you said, Vicki, particularly a part of your performance pay agreement is that they promote their classes on their social media. So yeah, they're building up their social media with your clients by promoting their classes in the studio. So this is somewhat a spirit of, you can look at it, this is a spirit of reciprocity, is they are helping you as much as you're helping them. So I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, for me, I mean, even thinking about this came about for myself because I was contacted a number of times by teachers who were like, "Hi, I met you once in Manchester 4 years ago. I am running a retreat. Could you just promote that to all of your clients, please?" And then I was so taken aback, I didn't know what to answer. And then I thought, well, it's kind of rude to just say no or not answer. So I need to come back with something, but I'm not going to just, that this is a valuable resource
Yeah.
that I have with, my clients. So I thought of something, I thought of this package and I sent that back to her and she was shocked and appalled.
Something like that, you could just say, I only promote from within my own community or my own teachers or something like that. I got contacted and there were a couple of teachers that I knew that would do retreats because when I owned my studio, I was not interested in doing retreats. So that was the other thing. I was not interested in doing retreats. So if a teacher contacted me that I knew, not just I'd met once, then I did not have a problem. And I knew, liked, and trusted them. That was the other thing, is I knew who they were. They maybe had taught. There was one teacher that she subbed at my studio quite a bit. She did some workshops for me. So she lived in Boston, so she wasn't going to ever be on my regular schedule. And I had no problem promoting her retreats because I knew that she did a really good job. So some of it's just depending on whether or not you want to do
Well,
retreats.
yeah, I think there's a big difference if
Yeah.
you're doing your own retreats and your own teacher
Yeah.
trainings. I think there's a big difference
Oh,
between
yeah,
those two
absolutely.
situations because
Yeah.
it becomes something that's like kind of competing with your own
Mhm.
product. So if it's not, it's sort of a different story. I mean, I've also had senior teachers approach me and saying, I would really like to teach at your studio because I would like access to your students so that I can promote my teacher training to them. Um, and I was like, well, it's really good that you're so upfront about this. And
Yeah.
I am not running a teacher training. And yes, you can come and teach. And I get a percentage of people that you recruit. So we did that and it worked out really well.
Yeah.
It's more like, somebody contacting you and just expecting you to do that for
Well,
nothing.
yeah, and
There's going to
there's
be some reciprocity
yeah,
there,
exactly. There's got to be some reciprocity, and I give comes back to agreements. So it's
Yeah.
like even if you're not doing retreats now, these are some of the things you need to think about when you're creating your teacher agreements. Is not only what's happening now,
Right. But what
but
might happen?
what
Yeah.
might happen in the future. Like maybe you're not doing retreats now or YTTs now, but maybe in the future having something in there. And the other thing too about teacher agreements is I had this conversation with a studio director, not probably within this month, about you can change your agreement.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
because they sign one agreement, you can change your agreement. Things change. And
Yeah.
then they have an option to whether they want to continue to teach for you or not. They don't have to sign the new agreement. which means, okay, they're no longer going to teach for you, which also kind of circles back to same thing with if you need to exit or fire or get rid of a teacher, is being afraid to do that. So it's like not running your business from a position of fear. So if you really need to change your agreement and there's one or two teachers who are thinking that, oh my gosh, they're not going to sign this, therefore I'm not going to do it, then something needs to be rethought on that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, what do you think about that, Vicky?
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do though? You kind of have to decide
Yeah,
what am I going to do if someone refuses to sign
yeah,
this? This actually happened to me at my studio when I wanted the teachers to sign a non-compete agreement, and one teacher wouldn't, and I think she was just she had no plans to open a studio. I don't think she'll ever open a studio. She was kind of scared of it. I could see that it filled her with anxiety, and so someone, a relative or something had told her not to do it. And she just wouldn't do it. And I just let it go because I could see that it was making her massively anxious. I was not worried about her opening a studio or competing with me. I was worried about another teacher doing that actually. Um, and I let it go, and I've not had a problem. She's kept teaching, still teaching for me today, and not had a
yeah.
problem with it.
However, just playing,
However, it doesn't really set a good precedent, does it?
I was going to say, playing a little bit devil's advocate here is
Yeah,
the
yeah. No,
fact
it
that
doesn't.
she wouldn't sign it and you kept her on. What message does that mean? If she had said something to another teacher, I mean, you're fortunate that it hasn't been a problem, but what do you do in
Yeah,
that? That's the thing.
it could have been a problem. I don't think that it was the best course of action, really, but
Well,
yeah,
hindsight's
you
always
live
20.
and learn.
Yeah, you tell us definitely live and learn. And thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's like it is hindsight's 2020, but that's the thing about when you make a change like this, is
Yeah,
if you're going to do this thing, whatever the thing is, and particularly if someone has to sign an agreement and they refuse to sign it, then you need to be prepared for the eventuality that they may have to
yeah,
leave.
yeah,
And if they refuse to sign it, if you back down, then again, that just sort of leaves you like, okay, then I've signed it and Carol Ann hasn't signed it. And what the heck? What
yeah,
WTF? You
yeah.
know,
It's tough. I mean, staff management.
hashtag
It's
Terry Stat.
it's
Your staff is your biggest asset and your staff is your biggest
your
pain.
biggest
Yes.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always because we're human beings.
But
We're human.
it's always tough to do these things when you don't have anything in place and you have staff in place already, and then you're suddenly rolling out something that you haven't done before. Like, what are you going to do? You have to ask everyone to sign it. What do you do if they refuse? I don't know. Like, of course, taking on new teachers after that was easy because then it's like, okay, these are the agreements,
Yeah.
everyone signs it, and it's never a problem. But yeah, it's
I guess that, like you said, you just have to be prepared for the eventuality if you do
yeah.
change and
I mean,
just
in
move
my
on.
mind, I was like, okay, these teachers have signed it now. Like, yeah, tick those boxes off with like in my mind, I see, I kind of see what they're about. And
Yeah.
then the two teachers who wouldn't, I'm like, okay, I see what they're about as well.
Yeah.
One of
Yeah.
them, I knew that it was, it probably wasn't going to be problematic for me. The other one, I was like, okay, this has shown me even more who she is. And then only a few months later, there was a situation where she was actively soliciting to my clients, and I had to fire her.
Yeah.
So it was kind of part of that.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about the flip side to that, a teacher agreement, if the teacher's doing the retreat, is what about when it's not a teacher-led retreat, it's your own studio retreat, and you have staff that's coming? Do you have an agreement in place with the staff that's coming? Because I just had this conversation with another client who is doing their own studio retreat and is bringing needs a couple of support staff there. which is really important, if particularly if it's a large retreat, you're going to need to have some people there to help you, is having an agreement in place. So we sat down on one of our coaching calls and said, okay, what are the expectations that the teacher is going to be held to during the retreat? And the first thing we wrote is, this is not a vacation, right? You are working. These are the expectations. They're going 2 yoga classes a day. You will be at the yoga chalet, whatever it is, a minimum of half hour before the class begins, and you will stay a half hour after. You will be at least a half hour at this, whenever we go on an excursion. You are expected to go all excursions, and you will be at the pickup spot or whatever it is at this time before the departure. So very, very detailed about when they.
Oh, Terry's frozen, or am I frozen? I don't know what happened. But Terry stopped talking. And anyways, I'll just kind of answer what Terry said there, which was, I think it's excellent to have a really, really detailed agreement. And it's probably necessary, because I've definitely had some horror stories about things going wrong at retreats, and lots of drama unfolding at retreats. And I think, you spend that kind of a lot of time together in a very sort of intense way. Things like that can happen. So yeah, having a really detailed agreement would be absolutely the best way to avoid that, and for the teachers to understand what are the expectations on them. So I think Tara's coming back. You froze. You froze and then disappeared.
Somehow I've been having my internet just kicked out for a second. It's happened that I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I got cut off. I was just saying, I don't know what you were talking about, Vicky, in my apps, but I was just saying.
I was just answering what you said. I basically said that it's a great idea, because so much drama can happen at retreats. Oh my God. And people need to know what the expectations are.
Yeah.
Because it's just, yeah.
Yeah, and to finish my thought there is that then the studio director had one teacher who was planning to go, was thinking of going and bringing her daughter, but she was not interested in being on staff at all, but was said to the studio director, because she wants to go and enjoy it as a vacation, which is absolutely legitimate, because the studio had a teacher price, a staff price, that if the staff wanted to go, it was going to be this price. And she said, however, if you would like me to teach a class or two, I would be happy to teach a class or two during the retreat. Right. So that was so the teacher was like, I'm going to pay if you want me to teach. And she's like, great. And then she just said, I'll pay you your regular teaching rate for teaching a class or two at the retreat. So, and I think it kind of goes all the way back. We've talked about this numerous times in the YC, and I know our favorite lawyer, Corey, does this all the time, is when you have agreements in place, it makes it so much easier, right? When the expectations are there, the agreements are there. It's like if there's a problem, then you could refer back to that agreement and say, hey, remember we agreed to do this, and this was the expectations. Oh, yeah. And I think when we get messy, particularly with humans, Vicky says, these are the expectations. This is what I want you to do. It's like, okay, this is what you expect me to do, but it's not written down. It's just sort of loosey-goosey, casual, the old classic handshake deal. Vicky says this, I hear this. We get there, and it's like there's this complete disconnect.
Yeah, quite often expectations are unspoken.
Yeah.
It's like everyone should just know them, because they just float around in the air or something.
Well,
but yeah, the more specific you can be, the better. And it doesn't have to be like, no one's gonna end up maybe going to court about this, and maybe it doesn't have to be something that's drawn up. Depending on what it's for, like if it's for something really simple, you might not need to even get a lawyer involved in it.
No.
I mean, the example here being, for example, people who help out the energy exchange, karma people. This was really difficult for the first few years of me running my studio, really complicated, and they kept like flaking out, and they were like just come and go and really unreliable, and it was terrible. And then we got some agreements together, like these are the expectations, and this is how much notice you need to give to quit, this is how you can swap your shifts, this is it was just all stated out really clearly. Both parties signed them when they started. Since then it's been running perfectly.
Yeah, yeah. Just because you put it down in black and white.
Yeah, black
You
and
wrote it
white.
on a piece of paper and
No one's going to go to court with that, but it's written down on a piece of paper and they signed it. So
yeah,
now they take it seriously.
yeah, yeah. It's just establishing the expectations, and it's and that's where having those SOPs and stuff comes in place. Although I'm going to start calling them something else besides SOP, because I read this. I think I posted it in the YC last week or something. It was an email I get that I subscribed to this guy. And I like what he said about leadership. So I posted it, and I even said, I did not write this, but the other thing he talked about is he called them alien abduction manuals, which I love. It's like, if an alien were to abduct you tomorrow, could someone step in and do the job? And that's where he had in his business what he called them that. He called them alien abduction manuals, and for all the different parts of his business. And the person that was responsible for executing that, that particular task, they would review them like quarterly to make sure that it was still up to date. Because, SOPs change, just like agreements change.
Oh yeah.
Processes change. And so the part of their culture was that once a quarter, they would just go through and like, oh, wait, no, that's changed. Remember, we're not doing that now. We're doing it this way. Oh, let's update this alien abduction manual. And I know that we've talked about this way long time ago, is do you have one for the things that only you do as an owner? And a big one is payroll.
Yeah.
Right? What if,
and that kind of access to
yeah,
bank accounts and things,
exactly.
like what happens
What
if
happens?
you end up in hospital unconscious?
You end up in the hospital, or you're abducted by an alien, right? And that means that you're physically not there at your studio to be able to do payroll. Who's going to do payroll for you? How is payroll going to happen? And that's where, whether maybe it's somebody in your company, or maybe it's a trusted person outside your organization, like a spouse or a partner or your BFF, or maybe your accountant, or even perhaps your attorney, someone that you can trust explicitly with information to, like your pay, all that kind of stuff, so that in the event you're not able to run payroll, someone else can step in and do it. Yeah. Because that's the one thing you got to do. Hashtag Terry's dad. You got to pay your staff. I mean, they got to pay your staff. So that's a good one, is like, what are some of the things that only you can do? And what happens if you're not able? So have you created your own alien abduction manual? I mean, truly.
Who knows when we're going to get abducted?
Yes, who knows when we're going to get abducted? Kind of along the similar lines, when you were talking, Vicki, about about retreats and stuff like that, is it made me think about, I've had several conversations lately. I guess it's because it's the end of the year, and we're planning 2024 and planning workshops and things like that, teachers wanting to do this stuff, is what's your process for if a teacher approaches you, or whether it's one of your teachers or a teacher outside, like, again, because I knew a lot of teachers in the area where in the New England area, wanting to maybe come do a workshop at my studio through connections and stuff in the Beaker world and things like that. What is your process for workshops? And I've been talking a lot with my clients about, okay, we just set this up, have an actual submission form for, you could set up a Google form, particularly if you have a lot of teachers, but even if you have a few teachers, right? Set up like a Google form and like basic information. And then I said, they should be able to answer these questions. It's like, who is this workshop for? Why would they want to do this workshop? What problem does this workshop solve? And then what are they going to get from it? And then what will they become by taking this workshop?
So helpful for your marketing and often so very lacking in the materials
Yes.
we get from teachers. When we
Yeah.
ask them to do a write-up, they do not. Certainly don't answer those questions.
It's like, yeah. And it's like, and then if they can't answer those questions, then why even do the workshop? Right. And then also, like, I had when I wish I had asked those questions before, but again, hindsight, and you learn as you grow and all that kind of stuff. But at least I did, when someone wanted to do a workshop, I did ask them to do a write-up. I didn't specifically ask those questions. If I did, I would do over, I would do that. But I also had, like, okay, I gave them a checklist. I said, okay, you want to do a workshop, all that, fill this out. I also said, you got to give me a bio. If it wasn't one of my teachers, you got to give me a headshot. You've got to give me pictures I could use in marketing. And if they did not work for me, and if the cost of the workshop was going to exceed $600 US, I said, you have to give me a copy of a W-9, which in the United States is their independent contractor information, because if it was over $600, I would have to send them a 1099. So I'd get the W-9 right up front. And I also said, I need a copy of your liability insurance. So I had a whole little packet that I would email to them and say, you need to submit all this stuff. Right. And then now I would add those questions. So that's the other thing is, are you just willy-nilly doing workshops, or is there a plan and strategy behind what is the workshop going to accomplish? How does it work into your goals? And then also what the split's going to be, if there is a workshop.
You have all of that ready, that is going to, and you just send that off. That's going to save a lot of time and
Yeah, and if
effort
they can't
and
even
going
get
back
that,
and forth.
yeah. And if they can't even get that to you, then that should tell you right then and there, you don't want them to do a workshop for you, right? And then since we're talking about it, as we move into the year, is with workshops and stuff like that, excuse me, is if you're going to do the split, and again, I've talked about this a lot in the past, is do the split on the net of the workshop, not the gross.
Oh yeah.
And the big one,
maybe the split is more to the studio than you thought.
yep. How much admin time? I would charge for my admin time. I build my admin time at $25 an hour. Like, you gotta have someone set it up in your software, whatever that may be. You have to get the emails written up. You got to get the social media posts done. That is all administrative time. Right. So I kind of got to the point where I knew, when it was just a basic workshop, it was about 2 hours of admin time. So I would just calculate that into the split, $50 for admin time, so much for advertising, blah, blah, blah. And then I also included these pesky credit card fees, right? I would take out, if I'm running it through my system, most people pay by credit card. I would back out the credit card fees, and it was significant. If you're doing something like a YTT or a retreat, it can be thousands of dollars in credit card fees.
Yeah.
Right. So why should the studio bear that expense alone? So that's why I would just have a spreadsheet. What was the total takings? What were the total expenses? Okay, this is the net. All right, it's whatever the split is, you get this, studio keeps this. And I would provide that with the document. I would send that when I paid. It's like, here's the breakdown. So they had all the breakdown. And I would tell them, this is what you invoiced me for, and here's how it goes. So it made it super easy.
Good.
Anyway.
Order.
And you learn these things the hard way. That's the
problem. You do. You learn it from having had mess.
Yes, exactly. You learn because you've had a mess. That's exactly right. So anyway, I don't know. Anything else, Vicky?
No, I'm going to go and put some lights on my Christmas tree. I know it's shockingly late, but better late than never.
That's okay. All right, wait, before we close, let's share one favorite memory of holidays past.
Ooh. I'm a little bit of a Grinch. Like, I don't love Christmas. I feel like it's a lot of enforced socializing and pressure. So one of the best Christmases I've had lately has been when me and my husband somehow managed to escape and avoid everyone else and spend Christmas just the two of us in the house that had been standing empty here in Sweden for months. We were living in the UK then. We were going over to this house that had been standing empty. We came there, and usually they keep the heating on, but their boiler had broken.
Oh,
So we got there and it was like snowing outside and it was freezing cold. And inside it was just as freezing. It
it's
was
cold.
cold as the grave, but there's an open fireplace. So we had lots of wood. So we just started the big fire. We had this roaring fire all evening and warmed up, and we slept close to the fire with, like, all the blankets in the house. And then we had Christmas there. We got the boiler fixed and it was just the two of us, and it was
Oh,
so peaceful. So
that sounds
that was
magical.
that was so relaxing.
It was fun. Well, knowing, I love the hubbub and rush of the holidays. But I have to say, because the reason I asked this, I was just asked this recently, is it was actually the last few Christmases when my mom was still alive. Because after my father passed, my mother finally sold the family home that she'd lived in for 2/3 of her life. She went in that house as practically a bride when she was 25 years old, and she was in her 80s when she moved out. So anyway, it was at her retirement community, and because of this, the studio, it was pretty busy around the holidays. I had taken to, and I had we had my two of my siblings lived locally, so she had family to be, there were kids and grandkids at Christmas. So I took to going out between Thanksgiving and Christmas, like early in December, I would go out, and in the last couple of years of her life. And it was super fun because I would go out and we would decorate her place, her new little she moved to a retirement community, which she loved, her little condo, which was awesome. So we decorated that. We would go visit dad. We go to McDonald's and because my parents used to go to McDonald's and get soft serve and take a walk. So we'd go to McDonald's, we'd get a soft serve, and then we'd go over to the cemetery, which was by the McDonald's, and we'd sit and we'd chat with dad and we'd visit him. And then we would play Christmas carols and we would watch old home movies. And it was just such a magical time for my mom and I. So those are some of my fondest memories as an adult, is just those last couple of years before my mom passed, just hanging out with her and remembering our Christmases past. So anyway, so I wish whatever holiday you celebrate, whatever celebrations you do, we wish you time to find with your family and loved ones, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's all about spending time with the people we love. So
Yeah. Take some time to recharge as
take some
well.
time.
Do something
Yeah,
that is not the studio, whatever it
yeah,
is.
yep, whatever it
It's
is
not the studio, and then you'll be so ready for the new year.
for the new year. And also just as a reminder that what you do, all of you yoga studio owners and teachers, is remember, you are out there changing people's lives. You're helping people change their lives all the time by the service we offer. And sometimes in the hubbub of everything, we can lose sight of the fact that we are providing something that is hugely important in people's lives. So don't forget that and appreciate you and what you do. All right. So on that note, let's go do some yoga. Vicki, I'll see you soon. Everybody have a fabulous weekend. Do what you need to do to celebrate you and your family. Big love.